waiting for him. So yeah.
I'll shoot him an email.
All right, sounds good.
Good to see you.
Yeah, nice seeing you. All right, well, now that everybody's here, we're going to go ahead and get started. My talk is Press Play to Begin. This is for the Johanson Fellows Workshops going on throughout the semester. This is hosted by Calvin Cameron. That's me. Hello, welcome. If you ever need to reach out to me, you can go right there to the doobly-doo, the calvin@nextgenescape.com. But we'll talk a little bit about me, then we'll talk about the meat of what I want to talk about today, and then some lessons that I learned along the way. So a little bit about me, some background. That is me in a culty robe. I'm not that edgy in real life. This was for a photo shoot for the business. But I graduated from Fresno State in 2019 with a bachelor's in business administration with the entrepreneurship option. And while I was at Fresno State, I joined just about every entrepreneurial program that they had to offer. I think I did them all. I tried to at least. I was the president of the Entrepreneurship Club. I joined the Entrepreneur Mentor Program, which was very fundamental for me to get to know a lot of high achieving peers as well as some great mentors along the way. I was part of the Lyle Center Hatchery Program, where I effectively incubated my business idea in a nice structured environment. I've attended as many pay it forwards as I can. I've actually spoken at one, which is very cool. We went to CEO Nationals with the Entrepreneurship Club our year, where it was a giant nationwide pitch competition in Kansas City. And that was a lot of fun. Fun little tidbit about that is that's the year when we had the most wins that Fresno State has ever had. And I'm going to take a little bit of credit of that. I didn't personally win. I personally didn't even place. And yes, I'm still salty about that to this day. But we had to force everybody who wanted to go to the pitch competition to apply to get their business in front of an actual audience. And because of that, we had way more students going than ever before, and it just so happened to be the year that we won. So that was pretty cool. We went to the Startup Prime Conference in Redwood City, the Fresno State Shark Tank pitch competition. I tried to change it to Innovate Fresno State. I thought it had a better ring to it. No idea if those programs are still going, but had a lot of fun while I was doing it here. There's probably a few I'm forgetting, but that doesn't mean that they weren't important. That just means I have a lot of stuff going on, right? A little bit more about me. I like to have fun with games. That's really like my passion, is being able to go about life through the lens of game design. I think that there's a lot of good takeaways that you can get when you look at life underneath the lens of what if it was like a game, right? And while I was in school, I had a big idea about what if I could make an escape room that was better. I know, groundbreaking stuff. Just do a better escape room. But it goes into a lot more than that. It's not just that boilerplate. I also pitched my idea to a VC group to get funded. The group of old people did not understand what I was doing, which is very understandable. But from that VC group, there was 3 people that were associated with it that wanted to reach out to me personally. And of those 3, one of them stuck around, which I'm very, very happy and still a little bit surprised today about. From there, I got an SBA 7A loan and launched my business 6 months before COVID hit, which was kind of like shooting a baby before it's like learn how to walk. But we were able to survive through the shutdown. It was not pretty, as the great Bo Burnham would say, an ATL, an all-time low. I hit a bunch of those. I hit that mark. But now we're doing great. In 2019, I was awarded Entrepreneur of the Year. Last month, we got Business of the Month from the city of Fresno, and we are in the running for the top global escape room, which is pretty crazy. During the pandemic, we were able to get a bunch of new people to play our rooms through virtual escape rooms. We had people from New Mexico, Arizona, New York City, Georgia, not the country, but from Germany, the country. They did play, which was crazy. I have no idea how they counted us, but that's how we got to be one of the top global ones. And then we have just launched Fresno's first R-rated escape room, which is very exciting. It's been hit with pretty good acclaim. A little bit more about the business itself. The business is called Next Gen Escape. I wanted something that kind of stood out, but we have to have escape in the name. And we have a core team of Kiara. She is my partner in business and life. You can see her right there as we're being models for our own escape room. It had to be very scrappy during the pandemic. In addition, we worked with Dan Karen. He's a Fresno State professor of theater, and that is not his actual title. I actually don't really remember. I'm a terrible, terrible person at remembering that. He also has a master's degree in theater technical design and lighting. He's gonna grill me for that probably if he heard this. So I hope he doesn't. But he's been very instrumental in showing us how to build the sets that we really want to create. And Kiara is fundamental on actually acting on those because I don't have any artistic talent in my bones. And then we also worked with Freddie Walls. He is a Fresno State engineering graduate, not from the Lyles Center, but from the Lyles College of Engineering. He helps with a lot of the programming and all the nuances of the tiny little details that go into the rooms themselves. And then finally, a bunch of mentors. Honestly, many more than can fit on this slide. And instead of giving them each an individual call out and shout out, I'm going to disrespect all of them by just making one bullet point for all, right? And then long story short, what the Next Gen does, we really focus on 3 different categories. The first and foremost is escape rooms, which are 60-minute long adventures inside of a themed room where you have to unlock puzzles, riddles, and other clues to get out in time. They are a lot of fun, but what sets us different is our value proposition of story-driven escape room experiences in fantastic sets. Nobody else quite does it like us. In addition, during the pandemic, we created play-at-home escape crates, which are essentially escape rooms in a big box that you play at home, or the office, or your church, or wherever else, the park. It's been played everywhere. And those have been very popular since the pandemic. We still offer them today. And then lastly, corporate team building is what we originally thought was going to be our bread and butter, but still, whenever we get teams to come out and play the escape rooms, we have a nice conference room where they can sit down and talk about what went right, what went wrong in the escape room, and how that all relates back to the workplace. So that's been our top 3 things. We do a bunch of million of other things, but that's probably what I want to be known best for. But while I was at Fresno State, I found a problem. I found that there was plenty of student entrepreneurs, but very few student entrepreneurs. And I don't use this term lightly. I don't use the term entrepreneur lightly because it is very, very negative. But I don't mean it to be negative for its intended purposes, but just to show you what I'm talking about. I think that if you want to be an entrepreneur, you are an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur. But an issue comes when students want to be wanting an entrepreneur, right? When they want to be like an entrepreneur, but there's zero commitment. Really, the only difference between an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur is action. Even if an entrepreneur has no sales, even if they don't have a business, as long as they're taking actual steps to getting there, they are therefore doing it, right? Entrepreneurs want it, but they have no follow through. Like, I want a Lamborghini, but I'm not doing anything in my life to acquire one. If just one lands on me, sure, I'll take it, but like, that's not really my goal in life, right? So I saw that this was a big problem. There was many students, peers of mine, as well as peers that I mentor, not peers, students that I mentor now at Patino High, who all want to be entrepreneurs, but they have no follow through. I think that there's a lot of wasted potential because being a student gives you unique, unfair advantages that many people don't have. Most people are either not a student, or not students anymore. There's very few people who are actually still students to this day, and that is an unfair advantage that absolutely should be used. But I want to ask the audience now, what stops students from starting a business? What is the top thing when you think of, if you wanted to start a business, what is the #1 thing holding you back? Anyone in the audience that want to say anything? All right, we have one right here, yeah.
I would think most likely because I'm broke or don't have time.
Don't have the time, don't have the money. That's like one of the top 2 things, right? And those are problems. That absolutely stops you. And in fact, the 3 that I always hear is I don't have the money, I don't have the time, and I don't have the experience. And that is the death of entrepreneurship. This is an asset that we use for the escape room, and I like how dramatic it is. But yeah, I don't have the money. That's a big thing that stops so many people from doing what they want to do, right? But I have some good news. Those all do suck. You are right to feel that way. You are right to know that, hey, not having the money or the time or the experience kind of blows a little bit, right? those are all fair. Not having the money, how are you going to pay for your rent? If you don't have the experience, how are you going to make a good product? And if you don't have the time, what are you doing in this audience right now? But how do you make problems not suck? We can focus on those problems, or we can focus on how to make them a little less worse, a little less intimidating than what they actually stand out for. And I know this because I experienced all of those. I felt all three of those points at different times in my life of trying to start businesses, as well as being an entrepreneur. I had those things of, hey, I want to do this crazy cool idea, but you know what? I don't know how to make the money for it. So I give up and move on. But how can we make them not suck? What if there's a way that we can make those problems into actually kind of a fun game, if anything, a fun obstacle to go over? And that's the main point of this talk, is to have fun while you're going about your life in general. Not necessarily just for entrepreneurship, but this is what this talk is about. But I think that if you apply this very dumb concept to a lot of different things, you can get a lot of good returns. It makes good times that much better when you're having fun, and it makes the hard times a little bit easier. And I think I do have some credibility with the pandemic of being forcibly shut down. The bad times were tough, but we were able to make things a little bit easier by having fun along the way. So there are top 3 things I think that most student entrepreneurs just need to stop with it. Just need to stop doing and moving on. They're going to be way better for it. And that's stop making excuses, stop overthinking it, and stop undervaluing your hand. This image over here is in one of our escape rooms where we host board game night. I think that's a very apt comparison to what's going on. But you need to stop all of these. If you stop doing these very not fun, sucky things, you can start having fun, right? Like I said, I don't have the money, I don't have experience, I don't have time. Unfortunately, that goes against my first point, which is making excuses. You really just gotta stop with the excuses, right? Yes, I understand if you don't have the money right now, that is a problem, but there are ways of going around that. In fact, there's a lot more ways nowadays than there were even just a few years ago, right? So you just need to stop doing it. When you start off with your entrepreneurial journey, or whatever journey you're going on, it's more fun to focus on your strengths and opportunities than to dwell on your weaknesses and threats. If you only focus on your weakness of not having money, you're not focusing on your strength of how can you get money? Who do you know who can help you get those goals, right? And this image is actually in our escape room. This is Anthony from Imago. He is trying to brute force open a combination lock in our escape room. It's totally legal before you guys think, oh man, that's not right. He has 3 out of the 4 codes for that lock. He knows 3 numbers that he needs, the 4th one is missing. Now, Anthony is not focusing on the weakness, that is, he's missing a code. He's focusing on the strength of, he has 3 of the dials already lined up. He already knows that the code is right. And he knows, using his strength of logic and deduction, that there's only 10 other possibilities. So if you just try them all, you're going to get through them. And that's an example of focusing on your strength rather than just letting a weakness of missing that last piece get to you. And he was able to win the game because of this strat, which is pretty cool. So I feel that most people like to make excuses. They feel safe, they feel nice, and they feel like good justifications for not doing whatever it is that you really want to do, right? So I like to focus on, instead of making excuses, focus on the basics. Focus on what is at hand, what strengths do you have. And first of all, what moves you? I think that passion is very critical to having that fun element. And if you can work passionately on something until 2 a.m., that's a pretty good indicator of what you might want to do with your life. You don't have to work until 2 a.m., but I just know from personal anecdotes that's how long I can tell until I need to go to bed, right? And then you need to get to know it as intimately as you can. Whatever it is that moves you, you need to know it from like the back of your hand, the front of your hand, whatever it is. Know as much about it as possible and really engorge yourself on whatever it is that you are passionate about. Should be pretty easy if you're really passionate about it, right? I look at escape rooms all the time. I play escape rooms all the time. Most people do not, because most people, that's not their passion, and that's okay. And what are you good at? You might not know this, but you are very exceptionally skilled at some things that certain people absolutely lack, and you can use that opportunity to your advantage. I always like to think of the very noble and humble accountant who likes math, and likes numbers, and likes calculations, and likes the stress and anxiety that comes with doing your taxes. I don't have that. That is not my strength. That is not my opportunity. That is not what moves me. But it's what moves them, and they get paid good money for it, and I know, because my accountant gets paid good money, right? So it might take some time to reflect on your true skills and what you need to nurture. If you're drawing a blank on what it is that you are good at right now, don't focus on that. It does take time. It takes a lot of time to really critically think what is important for you and what you are good at. And lastly, since this is business talk, you also have to do something that makes money. There's a million ways to apply your passion and skills to earn a living. There's Twitch, there's a million of other things, Patreon, that you can do. Creative people learning new ways of focusing on their passions and what they're good at while making money on the side. There's way more opportunity to do that now than there ever was before. And I always like to think of the starving artist for this example. The starving artist, this one likes to paint dogs, for example, right? And there's a lot of good potential here. Painting moves them, and they are really good at painting dogs. They're really exceptionally good at getting the tails done perfectly, right? But they need to make money. That's the last part, and that's why this is a starving artist, not Banksy artist. I don't know. And they need to focus on making money. So they start off by doing portraits of dogs. Things that they see on the road, they take pictures of, and they do it. They open up an Etsy shop, and they sell some prints. But it's not the wild success that they were wanting or craving. So they go back to the drawing board and think, okay, how can I apply this skill a little bit differently? And they start to paint portraits of people's dogs. They do pop-up events, maybe at Art Hop, where people bring their dogs up and you do a live sketch of their puppers, and they get good money for that, which is awesome. That's a new way of making revenue. But they quickly realize that, hey, this is very taxing for me. I have to paint like 5 dogs a day just to pay my bills, so I need to figure out a different way of really scaling this up, because burnout is an absolute thing that is crippling, and when you're just making ends meet, that's a quick way of being burnt out. So then the starving artist goes back to the board, and I'm really in the mindset that most people will hit immense success. They're just missing 1 or 2 more skills. And if this artist really focused on basic storytelling, what the artist could do is get the prints of the dogs that they actually like to do, put them onto paper with some quotes or even a very, very basic storyline, wrap that up in a children's book and sell it online, and make money that way. And that is way better for economies of scale than painting 1 pupper at a time. They can paint 25 doggos and then sell that for 10 years, right? Which is way better for your time and stress than actually doing every single tail, right? This quote is a favorite of mine. There is nothing to do in Fresno. This is a great thing. I've heard this ever since I was a little lad. Ever since I was young, everybody always complained there is nothing to do in Fresno. I've heard that complaint. I'm sure many here in the audience, of which there are dozens of empty seats, that have said that, have had that sentiment of there is nothing to do in here. And what a lot of people don't realize is that is a clear golden opportunity to do something. Instead of complaining about it, seeing it for what you can do with it can really change the landscape, and you can get paid good bucks for that, right? So if you're done making excuses, you also need to stop overthinking. I see too many students who think that going into their office and working on research that really gets them nowhere, I see them doing that too much. I see them getting too caught up on what they don't know and what they can do. And they overthink it. They overthink the process of what it takes to make a business. They think that every hurdle is just too far to go over. And they most typically plan to wait until after school to start their business. And those are kind of new entrepreneurs, because you can still do some work on your business while you're still in school. You just don't have to launch it. And paralysis by analysis is very debilitating. I know that personally. There was a curtain that we had to get for our haunted cabin room, and I was focusing on what kind of shade of red it should be. And I didn't know there's many millions of shades of red of what it could be, and there's a limited selection at Walmart, so I had to pick one that was the perfect curtain. Nobody has ever commented on the curtains in that room, so I don't know why I spent so much time on it. But this top bullet point right here, most students don't take action, which is a very failed opportunity. You don't need to launch your business to take action. You can do meaningful work right now while you are in school that set you up for success the moment you leave. And it's perhaps the best time in your life to get started. The only better time would be probably a day before today, and then the day before that, right? Being a student is an unfair advantage, and don't be caught sleeping on this opportunity. I definitely feel like a good amount of my success comes from me laying the groundwork at school, of meeting people who flat out would not speak to you if you are not a student. If you're not there to be helped and you're just some schmuck asking for help, most people don't want to do it, but they do like to help out students. And now I want to talk about chess for a little bit and how chess is relevant to this overthinking idea. And I like to think of this game that I made up for this PowerPoint called stress chess. And stress chess plays very, very similar to chess. In fact, it's the same rules, except the only difference is 3 extra steps, 3 extra rules. The first rule is that you have to make the first move. No matter what color you want to choose, you have to go first. Whatever it is, whatever piece you choose, that is the one that you have to stick with. Also, rule number 2 is that if you win the game of stress chess, you become successful immeasurably. You get wild success. Whatever your definition of success, if you beat this game, you have achieved that. And then finally, if you stop having fun, you lose. That's the only difference. That's the only difference. If you don't have fun while playing stress chess, you lose. And a lot of people might get kind of overwhelmed by that. They want to win. If they can win this one game, immeasurable success. That'd be amazing. Unfortunately, if you overthink, you will start to realize before you move your first piece, unless you are like me and you don't play the boring game of chess that much, you kind of think about all the different moves that can happen and all the combinations, and you kind of get overwhelmed with the near infinite amount of move sets that can happen and your opponent taking all the good stuff. But out of all the moves that you can possibly do, the first move is the most important one. It sets the pace and it sets the tone for the rest of the game. If you move the wrong piece and you open up your king or a queen for an early defeat, you will probably lose early on, right? So making it the first one is very important, and you can literally spend an entire afternoon thinking of what your first move could be. But that's not as fun as just moving the first piece and seeing what happens. In the game of stress chess, I never said that you lose by actually losing. You can always play again. You can always reset the board and keep going until you do hit that immeasurable success, as long as you have fun along the way. And then lastly, don't undervalue your hand. You really do have unfair disadvantages thrown in your life. Everybody does. And I'm not here to discredit those. Those absolutely exist for everybody. But you also have a number of unfair advantages that most people don't have that you can use to your advantage. It's very advantageous when you do those. And that's an example of focusing on your strengths rather than your weaknesses. I'm not going to be out here saying that there aren't legitimate reasons why you can't possibly do things, but there are ways to work around it. For example, I am not the artistic one at the escape room, but my partner is, and that's a really nice dynamic, and that's a really good advantage that we both share. In a lot of games, you have to play the hand that you have and not the hand that you want. Poker is probably one of the only ones where bluffing is the core component of it, but any other card game, you really can't just want a certain card, you have to play what you have. You can wish that you draw the right one, but whatever it is, you have to use it to your best ability. And I really like to ask people to not dwell on the other players in the game itself. While I was here, I could have been caught up in all the other people who had crazy or wildly more successful business ideas than mine. I could be jealous that they have unfair advantages that I simply lack. Or I can be focusing on the disadvantages that they have. It really doesn't do you any credence to focus on what others may or may not be doing. Just focus on what your game is. Over here on the right is an image of our Dead Man's Chest. That's our pirate-themed escape crate that we launched during the pandemic. And that's a prime example of not dwelling on the other players and really using the hand that you have. We were shut down. We could not have people play the normal escape rooms. But what we could do is take the escape rooms to their homes. And that's how we came up with this idea And so far, I haven't seen any of our local competitors doing anything like this, at least not to the scale in California, at least. So it's really cool to have something that have a nice silver lining out of a really crappy situation. But because of this, we are now more well known. We are able to reach out to different people who normally don't play escape rooms, but might want to play one at their home. So the three things that you really need to stop the death of entrepreneurship is excuses, overthinking, and undervaluing. Once you stop doing those, life becomes a lot more fun. Life becomes a lot more achievable when you look at it through a simpler lens. And I know this because I made all the mistakes. I was there at ground zero making all of them, but I still wanted to be an entrepreneur. Despite all the hurdles, despite all the excuses I have, I was an entrepreneur. I wanted to do it, but I always found an excuse to stop doing it. And the first step is to eliminate the excuses. You do have legitimate reasons to not do things, but as long as they aren't excuses, that's what's important, right? That's the crappy thing about them, is that they are always justified. You can always think, oh, well, I just don't have the time, so whatever. But you won't ever have the time. So unless you cut things out, unless you make time for it, it just won't happen. While I was a student here, before I had the idea for the escape room, I've had dozens of business ideas, from like barcade, a VR arcade, and a lot of different things in between, even a videography company. But a lot of those business plans will never see the light of day. Certainly, they will never leave my Google Drive, and I refuse to open them up either. I don't want to look at that madness. But I had to focus. Out of all those ideas that I wanted to do, I still wanted to be an entrepreneur. So which one of those ideas had the most tangible opportunity? What could actually be achievable? What could actually happen realistically? Making the next Uber, not really realistic at all, right? That's just not who I am. That's not the capabilities that I have, and also Uber already exists, right? But also, I wanted to focus on what is the path to least resistance. I figured out that out of all the ideas I would have and half-heartedly pursue, there was always some kind of downfall for it that was the crippling effect that I couldn't go past. So I lastly wanted to focus on, what do I have real experience with? I had managed an escape room before. I had left that to pursue school full time and to figure out what my startup would be. And it took me a few months to realize, hey, that's a skill that I have. That's an unfair advantage that I have that many people don't have. I could probably pursue this. It could be tangible. And it's an idea that I've already had that I could act on, which was pretty cool. And going back to this slide, you can see my wild hair. This photo is very important to me. You might not see on my face because I wanted to cover it up, but I am experiencing an ATL right there in that photo. That image is me right before I got my first haircut, after having $35 in my bank account. I went for 18 months without taking a paycheck, by living on people's couches, by crashing at the Lyle Singer hatchery. I hope they're not listening to this. Just to make ends meet for me. And this was right after I had gotten this check, and I decided to finally get my haircut done. And that was a really nice moment of me to actually feel like I'm shaving off all the years of stress and anxiety, and finally things might be happening for me. And you can see the proud check I'm holding there. I decided to press play. I decided to run with this idea and take it as far as I can. And I decided that whatever obstacles would happen, I would find a deliberate way of going around them. I would be belligerent in my pursuit of whatever this goal would be. I first started by minimizing my distractions. I had already left my job, which was a great way for me to get really focused on school and the startup. And I was able to pinpoint the exact business model I wanted. If I had chosen the first business model I wanted to do, I would not be probably here right now. And then I got focused. While I was at school, I never won any popularity contest. While I was in lectures for class, I was on my laptop working on my startup. I didn't really go to many parties. I was working on my startup. I was trying to get this off the ground and out. And then lastly, I got a lot of help. I have a hard time personally asking for help from people, but the comfort zone is really the death of progress, and because of that, I was able to meet many neat mentors who helped me out immensely along the way to get me to where I am today. And that's one thing of how I press play personally. Next up is don't overthink your imaginary customers. This is what I constantly see from student entrepreneurs, thinking that they know exactly who their target audience is, but you really don't get to know any of that unless you talk to them. So don't overthink your imaginary customers. They're just figments in your head. Go out and actually talk to people. Talk to your real customers, not just crazy hypotheticals of you think people who would do this, who actually would sign up for it. I made a lot of flawed assumptions while I was here. I made all these mistakes, remember? I made a bunch of assumptions. The first one is that business to business would be our bread and butter. That is what we are going to do the best out of anyone, and people will be flocking all across town just to go play our escape room with their business. We had workshop packages made with Imago that had letters of intent from many different businesses in town wanting to come in as soon as we opened up the door, and I thought it would be that simple. I really thought that that's what was going to make us a success. The second ask, if you will, was that I thought that college students would also be our core players. We chose a location just down Shaw. It's actually a half mile away from Fresno State. I thought that our location would be super advantageous for us. It would be an unfair advantage compared to all the other escape rooms. But then I missed a critical aspect of while I was in school, I didn't have money to go to escape rooms, and I don't really know what I expected that as soon as I had money to do escape rooms, certainly college students would then have money for escape rooms. They don't, they are broke, and that is totally fine, and that is something that I had to learn the hard way. The last ask I made of myself was that we would be number one. We would just open up our doors and we would immediately be the best escape room. People would just know, with a name like Next Gen Escape, oh, you're going to be number one. You're going to be the top dog. That's not the case. People don't really know your value proposition. It's a lot more helpful if you tell them what your value proposition is. I also thought the opening would be the hardest part, and that is not the hardest part of owning a business. The hardest part is closing down forcibly by the government several times. That's the hardest part. But I want to take a look at this slide right here. Out of all these people, these are players at the escape room, and it's a personal favorite of mine. You can see everybody's happy and chipper. You can actually see 2 college students right there. You might think that this is like family. You might think that maybe it's like a business or something, but it is a family. It's not a business. And it's not just college students. It is a family unit. And I want to know, out of all these people, you can keep this to yourselves, but who here has the most fun? Who here had the most fun in the escape room? Who looks the most ecstatic? And it's a trick question because I know who it is. And how do I know? Because I talked to them. I talked to each and every one of them and asked them how much fun you had. And by far, the one that was the most enthusiastic was Linda right here. She had the most fun. And let me tell you why she had the most fun, because she told me. She told me why. Is that she was happy that they got to play an escape room. And that's fine. Everybody here played an escape room. But it was special for her because she was able to get her sister and her husband to come join her family. And her college students, who are very busy living their own lives, she got them all together for one night of having fun together. In a world where it's very difficult to meet up or to consistently have fun with family or get dinner, she was able to organize this. And not only that, she was the one who scheduled it. She was the one who chose the room. She was the one who chose my escape room out of all the other ones. She was the one who chose the time. She was the one who made sure everybody filled out the waivers. And for the business students out there, the most important part is that she is the one who paid, right? So Linda right there is my personal favorite. And I realized that after a while that Linda is our core audience. That is our core player who we want to get. And I want to introduce Linda on a deeper level. I like to call her Linda Escape, right? And I think that for every business, you need to figure out who your Linda Escape is. Obviously, that's not her name, but I like to call her that. That way it doesn't get weird. But Linda Escape was very helpful because she gave us real feedback of really what she wants in escape rooms. Because of that feedback, we just opened up Fresno's first R-rated escape room to really good acclaim. And it's based on her feedback, literally Linda's feedback of what she likes in rooms. And I was able to figure out exactly what would be successful. Because of Linda, I was able to find my core audience of, hey, families really do enjoy this experience. College students do enjoy it, but only when they can afford it. And businesses like to do it when they're fun businesses. If they're not fun businesses, they probably don't want to do fun stuff. And lastly, I learned to lean into it. Lean into whatever Linda wants. If I know the real feedback and I know what my core wants, I can play into that and I can make the experiences that they actually want. And for the real feedback, I always went for the no. Before I know who Linda was, I always tried to ask people if this is something that they would do, if this is something that they'd want to do. I didn't assume that I intuitively knew my target customer's desires. I thought I knew my target customer, but not necessarily their desires. And that's a really big gap of information that many people have. And for this, I would really recommend reading The Mom Test by Robert Fitzpatrick. It's a really poorly written narrative, but it's a really incredible idea that goes into it. Your mom never wants to tell you no. And using that idea on other people and finding out and getting the real feedback that way has been very influential for me. After I found my core and I know who they are, I want to live them, laugh them, and love them. And while that is said really, really weird, it's because Linda Escape has the live, laugh, sign, love in her kitchen. I can guarantee you, I know it because I've been in her kitchen and it's there. And I want people who do that, who have those signs. Those are my core audience. And I can live with them, I can laugh with them, and we have a lot of fun doing things. And that's what I love to do the most. Then lastly, I just want to say on the record that I do really love Linda, maybe a little more than Kiara. Don't let her know that. She'll be watching this later. But I love Linda because she helps pay for my mortgage. And I make damn well sure that she is happy at the end of the day. That is the most important one, who is happy. I make sure that all the players have a good time, but Linda a little bit more than the others. And all these photos are relevant. Linda wanted to do a creepy escape room, so we made a haunted cabinet, and that was super successful. She wanted a creepy mobile escape crate that she could play during quarantine. We did that, super successful. She wanted a creepy Christmas theme. We made a Krampus-themed dark Christmas room, and it was all successful. It was all building upon it itself because we knew what our audience really wanted. And that's something a little bit different than what's already being offered. Lastly, the last couple slides, I just really recommend that you press play to begin. It's that simple of getting the start button, hitting it, and that's the first action you need to take to getting your entrepreneurial journey started. You are the number one thing standing in your way. You do have obstacles that you do need to overcome. You do have disadvantages that many people don't have. You can focus on those or play into your strengths. And I will say that you will learn way more about the game of business by playing it instead of reading about how it's meant to be played. Don't get stuck in the rule book of business. That's not the point. I see too many students getting their textbooks or getting whatever reading materials they want and dwelling on those things that they don't know and focusing on what the next step could be. I think that reaching the finish line of whatever project you have is far more important than doing it perfectly. Getting to the finish line is way more helpful than having the best escape room in the world. If I really want to make sure that we have the best escape room in the world, I would be overthinking what makes the best escape room. Instead, I focus on what makes a good product. This one over here is a favorite of mine. That's our promotional material for the Escape Clause mobile escape crate. That's Dan Karen right there as Santa. You might not be able to tell it through the squints in my eye, but this was a very emotional image for me because I didn't think that we'd make it to Christmas with the shutdown going on. But I was happy through the support of our fans and the support of our staff and our wild talents that we were able to do, the crazy ideas that we have along the way to get there. This one is also important for me. This is really, we wanted to focus more on community. And you might recognize some people on there. A lot of them in here are actually my competitors. They should be my number one enemies, right? I should not want them. I should be wrapping my hand around one of them, certainly, if they are my competitors. But instead of focusing on the fact that we are going for the same ideas and we are trying to go for the same audiences, I've decided to turn that into a strength. We created a community where on Facebook where players and owners can meet together and discuss things that they want. They can give feedback. Businesses can give promotions and discounts, whatever it is. Players can ask for recommendations, and it's a nice community where there was nothing before. There was nothing like this quite like the Central Valley. But because of our efforts, we were able to create that and have a lot of fun along the way. And the second last slide, while you're playing the game, this is just after you've started to play, you really do need to pick up the dice and roll them. When you're on a road trip, You leave when you're ready. You don't leave when the tank is full on your car. You don't leave when all the green lights suddenly are in a row ready for you. You are going to hit green lights. It will not happen when you go on a road trip and all the lights are green for you. You will always inevitably hit one of those red lights. And what's important is not complaining and worrying about that red light, but working on how you can get around it. I don't mean to run red lights. I'm saying that you have to be patient. That's part of the game, right? I will say a lot of certain aspects of my life and certainly many other lives are just up to down luck. And that goes for success as well as failure. And don't let poor dice rolls get you down. Just pick up the dice and play again. You are always able to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and try again in some shape or form. Don't put yourself into a position where you can't do that. Don't end up in jail. And then lastly, you really want to minimize the odds of rolling badly by setting up your environment for success. I was consistently coming up with business ideas that would always inevitably fail. Either my critical partner would back out, or I didn't have the money, or suddenly my life changed and something happened where I couldn't do it. But once I focused on setting up my environment for success, when I started to focus on making sure that I had every possibility to be successful, that's when I felt like I kind of took the bull by the horns and made a successful business out of it. Thanks to the Johanson Fellows for asking me to host this. Thanks for the Lyle Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I got it right, thank you very much. For hosting us here today. I have a number of recommended readings that I really, really wholeheartedly recommend, more or less in this order. And if you don't have the time to read, don't worry, I got your excuse in the book because I have that same excuse. I don't have time to read, but I do have time to listen to audiobooks. When I'm driving, when I'm walking, when I'm doing menial chores at home, I can listen to audiobooks pretty easily. If you ever want to reach out to me, you can always email me at calvin@NextGenEscape. I'm very responsive. If you didn't catch it, the business name is Next Gen Escape. And if you can't remember that, you can always just type in Fresno Ski Room on Google. We are pretty good about SEO and being at the top. But other than that, that is the talk for today. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. And I'll open up for questions right now.